Hello everyone, my name is Shiburis and I have a spending problem. Actually, this entire year has been full of problems. Sorry it took so long. I might have taken things a little too seriously. Christ, that's gonna be a long video. The Visroak, Makuta Kairox's oddly adorable Chaos Swarm from 2005. Like, look me in the eye and tell me these guys aren't cute, you're lying. In addition to their cute little spinners, they were equipped with a special kind of plot juice known as Hordika venom. A substance that ironically turns problems into even bigger problems. Why does this make sense? Like, imagine getting bitten by a venomous spider and 6 times out of 10, it gives you superpowers instead of killing you. That is how Hordika venom do. This marked the start of Bionicle's unhealthy obsession with genetic mutation in a world populated by mostly mechanical beings.
Come on, Shib, it wasn't that prominent.
Yeah, no it was. I cite the following. At least 50% of the Dark Hunters at minimum are mutated or otherwise altered. 2006, not one of the Paraka exists in their natural state, with Zakten notably being a bug swarm. 2007, the waters of the pit have mutagenic properties, for no reason. 2008, the Makuta actively dabble in genetic experimentation to the point that there are not 1, but 2 scientists among them who have it as their hobby. All 3 Makuta in the swamp, despite only being suits of armor with gas in them, are confirmed to be mutated by the waters of the pit seeping in from above the massive cave. Greg, this was a crutch. Bionicle started as an island folk fantasy, but with robots and sci-fi undertones. There are other narrative devices to introduce exotic characters and fauna into your setting, and not all of them need to be super complex. How many cell types do you think exist within the human body? Well over 200. Now, how many more than that do you think the Great Spirit robot might have? You can add new species and threats without altering existing ones. The universe is a big place. I'm really sorry for ranting, but it took me until scripting this video to realize that because of this fixation on mutation, that we would not see a natural species until 2009. All of this gives weight to my theory that Greg just has a diehard corruption kink. You're real sick fuck, ain't you, Farshti? That's okay, I'm worse. So Hordika venom, in the lore we're treated to how it destroys ecosystems by twisting life into a disgusting parody of itself. And rather oddly for the Metro Nui arc, we never got a full catalog of all the things that this gimmick fluid managed to mess with. So I made a post in my community tab asking you guys for some Rahi that I could pump full of the stuff. And to your credit, you gave me some pretty banger ideas. The 2 that stuck out most to me though were the Usul Crab and the Kikanalo. The Usul Crab because I just love the idea of turning something cute and innocent into a terrifying monster. And the Kikanalo because, well, it's already really big in universe. Though you've seen the video title, this is not a dual feature, so the Usul Crab is gonna have to wait for another day. Usul or Usul Crab? Comment your team down below. Violate that like button. But today we finna mutate the Kangaroo-Rhino into a walking sin against the Great Spirit. Hope you enjoy. So for this, we're gonna need 2 things. First, we'll need a Kikanalo. Perfect. He's missing a few parts here on the leg, but that's not important. We can still work with it. Now we'll need a Visroak and some forbidden love. Aishiteru, Kikanaro-san.
Visroak-sama.
Put your fucking Kimachi in my Wadui, am I right? And bam! We have our monster. I'll never know exactly why I call this the part count section when I almost never have the exact part count whenever I finish the vid. You want a parts catalog and instructions? Get this video to 1K likes. Instructions take time to make. Kinda needless to say, but he's really pushing it in the size department. In the books, Hordika venom sort of has the tendency to just get your thumb out of the pic. In the books, Hordika venom sort of has the tendency to just act like the T-virus and upscale everything that's not a major character. So, thank God that I can't make anything with less than 500 pieces. Looking at some of these early images, you can probably see that I started out with sort of the wrong body plan. I was doing dinosaur on a kangaroo. Had to rework him a bit so he was a bit more upright. And yes, I do hear you looking at him and saying, "Sheep, that looks pretty rough." And that was precisely the point. If you've ever seen animals within the wake of a nuclear disaster, you don't really want to touch them. Our brains have been hardwired to find things that deviate from nature uncanny. Pustules, warped proportions, and additional limbs are just things that we naturally find repulsive. But within the context of Bionicle, where most of the inhabitants of the universe are biomechanical, we need to consider what is uncanny for the natives of the story. Jagged edges, crumply plating, and discoloration and distortion of components were some of my best guesswork in regards to this little thought experiment. In the lore, it is very clear that they were going for Hordika Beast to be a kind of nightmare fuel. So I aim to put him more on the haphazard, unsettling side of things rather than giving him a design that actually flows nicely. Instead, I aim for it to sort of zigzag. But before getting into the meat and potatoes of the big guy, let's pay some respects to the OG model, shall we? Because I do have him right here after all. The original set released in 2004 had 2 figures, the Rahi Beast himself and Toa Lakan, with possibly the most elusive blade pieces in the entire franchise. But of course this vid is about the Kikanalo, so Lakan can kindly screw off. He has got a whopping 17 points of articulation, 3 in the arm, 3 in the legs, 1 in the neck, and the last 3 along the tail. Having been designed by somebody who is actually sane, he's got a fair degree of posability. It helps that he's a light build and that he has this tail here for a counterweight. And speaking of the build, let's take a minute just to appreciate how outside the box this guy's construction is. This was not a conventional Bionicle set by any means. The air katana here in the nose is really held in by just one Technic pin that keeps it from wobbling up and down. It relies on this gap here to maintain this profile from the side. The Rockshi thighs see some very noteworthy use here in the upper arms where they really serve to bulk out the build. I'm not sure of too many official sets that use a technique like this, if at all. And then we've got the Rockshi backplate on the thighs, which is literally just jerry-rigged not to fly out of place. Like, that's min-maxing parts right there. Just look how much it bulks this guy out. And something we would see in sets a few years later was this double connection here at the hip assembly. As you can see, it helps keep him nice and upright with a rigid connection. Which begs the really good question of why the heck did they hop on all fours in the movie? All in all, and I say this in the best way possible, this set legitimately feels like it was designed by a fan. I remember turning a page in LEGO magazine as a kid and just having my neurons explode when I saw this dude. I was like, oh my god, he's so cool, mom, dad, I want that, go buy it, please. They didn't buy it. Being a lower class Latino family sucks. More on his design, I was kinda surprised to find out these things were prey animals when I saw the movie. You'll forgive me for making assumptions with stereoscopic eyes like that. Large herbivores generally have their eyes on the sides to watch for predators. That is cursed. And these JoJo shoulders would really just get in the way of looking around unless they, did something like this. Deducting a few points for that, it's not science enough for me. Anecdotes and fun tidbits aside, this guy's awesome. Economic as hell, mind you, but he's got detail exactly where it counts. I give him a 3 out of 5. Gear function or opening jaw would have been nicer. A great set. The fuck? What's wrong with you? Are you okay?
I want him to breed me.
No. With the OG figure covered, let's go over this abomination of mine. To that one guy who saw my Scorvax video and left this comment, I put this here for you. Play features and posability. I continue to go overboard in size. How I still have parts left over after 3 Titans is a testament to my reckless spending habits. Habits fueled by my wonderful patrons. I love you guys. Starting with some good head. This dual metro limb setup for the neck gives him a simple but wide freedom to look around. He can look up, down, and twimpst. I paid homage to the movie's representation for the bottom jaw by setting up a hockey stick on a simple hinge. The neck is pretty simple. Together, these metro joints act as like a ball joint hinge, which is all it really needed to do. The arms are mounted on pseudo butterfly joints. The shoulders don't have a ton of articulation, but in my opinion, they don't really need it. The elbow is a good old-fashioned ball joint hinge. Same story at the wrist. Over on the right, we've got this static Paraka foot with a tiny little swivel for a thumb. On his left, we've got an engorged prostate pecker assembly mounted on another ball joint with a Vaki blade middle finger on a hinge. The legs, like the original set, have 2 ball joint connections. One is static, the other is on a rotatable stock that enables some post-stability. And down by here, you can see the 7 circles of hell. The thigh and lower leg are connected to this dual CCBS ball hinge joint assembly and a piston. The ankle here consists of another ball hinge and piston assembly. I've also got to denote those friction extenders, 1 here, 2 here, 2 here, and 1 here. And onto the tail, ball joint, ball joint, ball joint, ball joint, ball joint, and ball joint. Generally speaking, this is the most stable build I've ever put together in comparison to its size, minus my self-mock. A lot, and I mean a lot, needed to change from the initial design in order to get him this stable, and it was worth every minute I put into it. Which of course brings us to the design changes. I started this project with the first version of the head, and it has only seen a few minor adjustments since.
The comics already showed us what a Hordika Kikanalo looked like. Why the fuck did you change the head?
First off, look at how tiny this thing is. It's a bite-sized boy. If I were to build this to these exact specifications, there is no way in hell it would actually work, goddammit. Okay, I forgot my ability to needlessly scale things up. I took a few artistic liberties here, and it is not bad. Though this honestly still looks nothing like a Kikanalo. They could have put any Rahi in the panel directly before this one, and it would have worked as well.
It has the claws.
Oh yes! Yes, it has claws. Onua's claws. The Kikanalo claws. The Nui Rama claws. The Proto-Drake claws. The Razor Whale claws, the Vaki Hunter claws, the Archive Mole claws, the Favorable claws, wait, it's a bull, the Furnace Salamander claws, and of course, you will forgive me if I think this panel of a monster ripping its way out of a cocoon was drawn well before this one of a Kikanalo getting ensnared by Visroak. So going forward, you will see both pictures of this and the original head that I built. Pick whichever one you like, it'll be your headcanon. The bottom jaw used to always be on a hinge, but as you can see here, it used to be much too shallow for an underbite, instead giving him a weird kind of Chad chin. There were some very minor changes in the arrangement of his face, but nothing worth really noting. For the neck, I would ditch these Metru thigh armor pieces and just swap them out with these light staffs instead, since it helped the body really flow into the head, sliding into the back. The part of the torso that saw the most changes was this area down here where the legs and tail connect. At first, the support socket back here wasn't very secure. In fact, it would wobble around and disconnect frequently. So I secured things with a rail and pins that helped keep things from sliding out.
God, this is heavy.
Properly beefing up this section was a concern for a while. As you can see, all I had here at one point was just a Kalma armor piece tacked onto a Rockshi back, and it looked bad. But if you build MOCs, you sort of understand this. Sometimes you just have to throw something together in order to come back to it later. And when I finally did, I added some jetpack parts here to help beef it out and add some round meat. In regards to the mid-back, Gravity really did not want these parts lining up for some reason. It's sort of hard to explain. In the end, I used some Technic beams to create a bridge between the top and bottom, which held things nice and rigid. The spines leading down the tail were born out of some attempt to add detail where the original set had very little. It became significantly longer and shorter several times over the course of development for the sake of balance. I eventually figured that the problem wasn't the tail itself, but rather it was the knees, which were just way too simple. At this point, they could not support the amount of detail that I was adding. And speaking of legs, where to start with these things? You can see here that the middle joint used to be just a long CCBS piece, and look, I've had enough of LEGO's friction game, just let this clip speak for itself.
Okay, we're gonna try something a little bit different here. This is a lesson in the importance of understanding the materials that you work with. So, sorry, no gloves for this. This is the revamp of the leg that I have done. As you can see, it twists with not a whole lot of effort. Yet, it is using 2 of these friction joints mounted on, these through balls here. Somehow, this singular one mounted on this shin piece, it's significantly harder to bend than these 2 combined. Now, why is that? It's because of the plastic that this one is made from. It is far more sticky than these ones here combined. So, that's lovely. That's a ton of work done thinking I was achieving some form of stability for nothing. So that's gonna be fun.
The remedy to that was 2 steps. Number 1, use more abrasive plastic. Number 2, use another piston where I wasn't using it before. Once I added that to both legs, posing him went from an absolute nightmare to a lucid dream. Extremely satisfying, disappointingly short, and giving way to only more pain. The dual throwbot limb assembly here looks like a weak and unusual join, but I 100% assure you this is a perfectly humane treatment of parts. I fortunately have yet to have either of them unplug on me. Study funded by Sheebers. The paw assembly here started out simple and much closer to the ankle. But I decided it needed to look more like the foot on the original set, so I extended it. I just added 3 axles to give it some length. Also threw in a beam to keep them from wobbling out of position with one another. Wrapping up the legs, we are on to the much lesser known arm saga. No, not that one. As you can see by these high-res images, the arms used to be a basic Anika setup with a Rachi foot kind of haphazardly slapped onto them. Aside from being unimaginative, the major issue with this was that the shoulders were way too narrow. This of course had him looking way too much like a dinosaur. The OG set has distinct shoulders. Them boys is beefy. So I took a page out of my old playbook and put together an upper arm assembly using Ninra Ghost Blasters. The arm is mounted on a simple Mata hand connected to a simple Technic axle that runs through the length of the barrel. How does it not wobble around and twist while in there? How does Todd Howard keep making mistakes? No, it's actually relatively simple. I stuck the axle in there with a Technic washer to keep it from wobbling around. Don't worry, it's not stuck, it's super easy to remove. The end of the axle ends in one of these through connections right here, which conveniently keeps it from wobbling around because it connects to the exterior of the blaster. And yes, that simple connection at the elbow is more than enough to hold up the arm on both sides. And if I can, I'll show you another mock that I had that also made use of the Ninra Ghost arms. I call him Pipe Face, he's like Pyramid Head. Continuing down, you can see that I tried something with the 4 arms. What exactly, I'm not sure. I was tired. In time, I would come to realize that you do not always need to reinvent the wheel, and sometimes the basics work. So I stuck with the mostly basic Paraka arm that you can see here. This massive circumciser on the left arm is probably the last thing I added to this part of the build. You guys have no idea how many of these jokes are rehashed from the cutting room floor of the Scorvax video. I had qualms about the semi-legal connection I did here where I mounted the Vaki blades, but the end result here just looked too good not to do. It was while working on the arms that I decided that the entire build could do with a little splash of gold. And I'm well aware that there's not a hint of gold anywhere on the original set, it's just, discoloration. Great Spirit knows that Toametru didn't have a lick of silver on them before going Hordika. Did I mention that he is big? Over twice as tall as the vanilla set as befits a Hordika build. Kikanalo, Likan, Skirmix, remember Kangaroo, not a dinosaur, and Miss Stephanie.
Breed.
Stop. Animal husbandry and wifoolery aside, that's gonna wrap us up for this one. I'd like to thank my patrons again. Your patience is undeserved and means a lot to me. These videos do take a while to put together, so until I have a better means at managing the workload, I will be prioritizing instructions for mocks that people really seem to like. It's much more important to me than anything else that the video is entertaining. 2024 has been one hell of a year so far. I lost one of the most important men in my life, among other happenings. But I am planning on filling the content gap with some mock building streams, so look forward to that. I'll post more updates on that as I go. The self-mock video turned out to be way too ambitious a project. It is coming out, it just needs more time. So until then, you have a Vampro revamp to look forward to. And that mock is gonna be... I worry that I'm a degenerate.